Welcome to SVR IAS Academy. ComeOnIndia.com is our website. In today's newspaper analysis video lecture, we will teach you so many important topics which are highly useful for the IAS 2017 examination. Today's date is November 8th, 2016. First topic that you are going to learn is about Operation Euphrates Anger. Operation Euphrates Anger. Just look at the image. It is the image of West Asia, and the countries like Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Iran are often coming in the news almost on daily basis. Whether it is the Yemen crisis where fight is going on between the government rebels, there's a Houthis on the one side and between the government forces on the other side. Government forces are supported by Iran and Houthis rebels, not Iran. In this struggle, Houthis are rebels which controls most of the northern parts of the Yemen, are supported by Iran, and government forces are supported by Saudi Arabia. Government is a supporter of Sunni Muslims and Houthis are Shia, belongs to Shia group. As you might be aware that Shia Sunni Muslim conflict is one of the reason for ongoing trouble in the West Asia. Saudi Arabia is the Sunni Muslim majority nation. Shia Muslim majority nation is Iran. In this background, emergence of the ISIS complicated the West Asian situation further. Iraq for the last 2 decades is under the pressure, especially in 2003. Saddam Hussein was killed by US-led forces. In that, Iraq got devastated, and after that, instability was one of the issue, especially between the Shia and Sunni conflict in the Iraq, which leads to instability in the Iraq, and the situation in the Iraq was further complicated by the emergence of the terrorist group called ISIS, and it took away the important cities like eastern part of the Syria, and most of the northern part of the Iraq was controlled by ISIS. And after big fight with the support of US forces and Russian forces, Turkey, Syria and Iraq all attacked ISIS from all the directions. So the area under ISIS control was shrinking, and at present there's a fight, or Iraq forces launched an offensive to recapture the city called Mosul. So the fight is going on. From the western side, Syrian Democratic Forces is opposite to the Bashar al-Assad. You might be studied about Syria thoroughly. Syrian ruler name is Bashar al-Assad. He is backed by Russian forces. Syrian opposite group named as Syrian Democratic Force. They are the rebel groups, Syrian Democratic Forces, supported by US and its allies. In the ongoing civil war that crossed more than 4 years, more than 3 lakh Syrians were died in the civil war, and more than 20 lakh migrated to various parts of the world, mainly to European Union as refugees. ISIS also captured some parts of the eastern Syria, which were under the control of Syrian Democratic Forces. Recently, Syrian Democratic Forces launched an offensive to recapture the area under ISIS control. So the Operation Euphrates Anchor is an operation launched by US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces to retake Raqqa. Raqqa is a de facto capital of the ISIS. ISIS stands for Islamic State. So Syrian Democratic Forces are the rebel group formed with the help of the US, and it is an alliance between the Kurdish and Arab armed groups which is fighting against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. About Syrian issue we already covered in our earlier video lectures in detail, so refer to the earlier video lectures to get complete picture about Syrian crisis. Second topic that we are going to discuss is about International Day for preventing the exploitation of the environment in war and armed conflict. So we have to prevent the exploitation of the environment in war and armed conflict. We will give you a nice example. There is a recent example to understand much better about the celebrating the International Day. You might have studied about Mosul. In your newspaper, you might have studied about Mosul. It is a place in Iraq. At present, it is controlled by ISIS, and recently Iraqi armed forces launched a major offensive to retake the Mosul from ISIS. Because of the offensive launched by Iraqi armed forces, ISIS could not stand the pressure and they are slowly retreating. While leaving the parts of the Mosul, ISIS are setting fire to the crude oil wells. So already they set fire to more than 20 crude oil wells. As you might have studied, Persian Gulf is the world's largest region where crude oil deposition is maximum. Iraq is a part of Persian Gulf where it has huge reserves of crude oil, and three major oil exporting countries in the Persian Gulf are Saudi Arabia, Iran and Iraq. Because ISIS set fire to the oil wells, environment gets damaged in this war. So we need to celebrate a day, and we have to devote a day for preventing the exploitation of the environment in war and armed conflict. Awareness should be raised among the people. So November 6th, you should never forget November 6th. It can be asked in the prelims examination when International Day for Exploitation of the Environment in War and Armed Conflict is celebrated. It is on November 6th. The main objective of celebrating this day is to educate the people about the damaging effects of the war and armed conflict on the environment. So creating awareness is the major issue, and the objective of celebrating the day is to recognize the role of healthy ecosystem, and we need to manage the resources sustainably so that risk of the armed conflicts can be minimized. In case if any conflict occurs and the conflict ends by 1 year, means the environmental impact of the conflict will last for many years. For example, in the World War II, USA put a nuclear bomb on the Hiroshima and Nagasaki islands of Japan, and entire world forgot about World War II. But the impact of the nuclear weapons still felt by the people living in the islands of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Still many people feel the pain. The childhood babies who are born at present also have some genetic mutations. They have some abnormalities because radiation affects genes and DNA, so that the damages will be carried to the next generation. So armed conflict have long-term impact on the ecosystem and natural resources. Another point is that in armed conflicts and in war, damage to the environment is felt beyond the limits of the national boundaries. If in case two countries, country A and country B, are involved in the armed conflict, means the impact on the environment felt to the nearby countries as well. So the damage to the environment cannot be restricted to the national territories itself, and the impact will be felt by the next generation as well. So that's why United Nations General Assembly called for UN Millennium Declaration, in which it emphasizes the necessity to protect the environment. The point is important for the prelims examination. United Nations Millennium Declaration aims to protect the environment, and the declaration has so many important points. We advise you to prepare thoroughly on this topic for at least 100 words, so that if you get the question, you can write good answer in the mains examination. Third topic that you are going to learn today is about China constructs floating nuclear reactor in the South China Sea. If you turn the newspaper in the world section, every day you can see a news on South China Sea. The last couple of years, every year civil service aspirants expect one question from the South China Sea, but UPSC sometimes never asks question on the South China Sea and some common topics, and UPSC asks some uncommon areas. But it's the duty of every civil service aspirant to know about South China Sea, where it is located, what is 9-dash line, why there is a conflict, and what is the international judgment that is given by the international court, what is UNCLOS, and what is 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone, and what is the basis on which China claims the entire South China Sea, what are the countries which are also claiming South China Sea, what are the important islands located in the South China Sea, especially Paracel Island, Spratly Islands, and so on. What is India's involvement in the South China Sea, especially with respect to India-Vietnam relations, India's oil exploration activities in the South China Sea along with Vietnam. Like that, we can list a maximum number of topics related to South China Sea. And China also constructed artificial islands in the South China Sea, so that it can be turned as a military pad or helipad in case war occurs. So China needs to provide power supply to the artificial island. For that, China started constructing the floating nuclear reactors in the South China Sea. In this background, let's discuss about this in detail. So China has started to build first floating nuclear power reactor, and the name of the reactor is ACPR-50S reactor. So just to read it once or twice, ACPR-50S reactor. It's a 200 megawatts reactor. It will help China to power the offshore facilities in China's open sea and island reefs. Offshore energy supply is vital for any nation which is aspiring to become the naval superpower, or you can say blue water navy. The concept of blue water navy is important for the mains examination, and we have already provided a separate lecture on the blue water navy and South China Sea, 9-dash line, etc. Visit our website commoonindia.com to get separate lectures on these topics. So already we discussed, international court ruled against Beijing that Beijing claimed it has historical rights to the most of the waters of South China Sea, but international court ruled against Beijing and said that Beijing had no historic claims to the most of the waters of South China Sea. The case was filed by Philippines. China was not a member of international court, so its judgment will not affect China's activities. So sovereignty over the South China Sea is also contested by countries like China, Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan, and China's move to construct the floating nuclear reactors will further increase the tension in the South China Sea. The concept of floating nuclear reactors, first proposed by US in 1970s, then it abandoned. Russia going to demonstrate the technology in the next year. So let's prepare thoroughly on the South China Sea and various topics related to that, like 9-line, UNCLOS, International Court judgment against China and its implications, India's role in the South China Sea. So prepare thoroughly on this topic. Surely you will get one question for 2017 IAS examination. Now we are going to discuss one important topic. It's one of the expected area for mains 2016 as well. It's about 700 megahertz band. 700 megahertz band. The topic looks like a science topic, and how UPSC may ask what is the issue behind it. If you are reading the newspaper regularly, you may understand after seeing the word 700 megahertz. If you are new to this topic, then watch the video carefully. Few months back, Government of India actioned many bandwidth to the private sectors, 700 megahertz and I think 200 megahertz bands to the private sectors. What government does? Government through ISRO launches satellites, and via satellites it gets a bandwidth. Then after getting the bandwidth, Government of India auctions the bandwidth to the private players. Private players like telecom companies like Vodafone, Airtel, Jio, all are participating in the action. 700 megahertz band also one of the band actioned by Government of India, but no telecom companies interested in buying this band. You may ask one question. So if no telecom companies is interested to buy this band, means it is not so important. It is a very important band, there is no doubt. Telecom companies says that reserve price or the basic price fixed by the government is very high, so they say they can't afford this price. And also there are other reasons as well. So we will discuss about 700 megahertz band in detail, various features, advantages, why telecom companies were not interested to buy this band, and so on. Why I am covering this topic? Recently, few days back, BSNL, there is a 100% Government of India owned public sector undertaking, has shown interest to buy the 700 megahertz band. So that's why we have to learn about 700 megahertz band in detail. At present, you might have got the Jio SIM and enjoying the unlimited 4G services till December 2016. And at present, the 4G services are rolled out in India by using the 2500 megahertz bandwidth. By using 2500 megahertz band. So what is in there? Anyhow, you are getting 4G connection, whether companies uses 2500 hertz or 700 hertz. What is the problem for you? You are getting 4G connection, and as a civil service aspirant, you should know, because 700 megahertz has huge advantages when compared to 2500 megahertz bandwidth when it comes to the 4G. If you are staying inside the building, means 4G signal might be weak. You will getting 1 point, 2 point like that, because telecom companies at present are using 2500 megahertz. If companies change to 700 megahertz spectrum bandwidth, this bandwidth easily penetrate the homes inside the building. So improved indoor coverage. It improves the indoor coverage, whether you are staying in the 7th floor building, 10th floor building, you are staying inside your room, it doesn't matter, you will get good 4G connection. Another point, prelims point, is that if the bandwidth reduces, means penetration will be high. If bandwidth increases means its penetration into the building is less. So remember this point. So the recently Government of India auctioned 700 MHz bandwidth and the reserve price fixed for 1 MHz is 11,000 crore. So exact price is 11,485 crores per megahertz. So telecom companies says the price is high reserve price or high auction price, because of that they could not purchase that. So the 700 MHz spectrum went unsold in the India's biggest auction. So recently BSNL approached the telecom department for airwaves in the 700 MHz to roll out the 4G services. So one clear advantage with the 700 MHz is that it provides wider coverage and it is efficient. Nearly it is 5 times efficient when compared to using the 1800 MHz, especially for the rural areas. There is no problem for urban areas, especially tier 1, tier 2 cities, where companies using the broadband and other services, by using that they are providing internet connection. But what about the rural areas? In rural areas, number of people who are using internet is less at present. Definitely the number is increasing, but when compared to the urban areas, the number of people using the internet in the rural areas is less, and villages are located far away from each other. So infrastructure cost is high for providing the internet connection. So in this background, 700 MHz is important. Telecom companies has to establish base stations to provide internet connection. What is base station? So just think, Government of India through ISRO launches satellites to the space, and satellites are placed here. From here signals are transmitted to Earth, whether 700 MHz or any spectrum band. Here Government of India auctions the bandwidth to the telecom companies, and telecom companies have to set up base stations so that the signals will be received, and after receiving the signal it will be transmitted to the neighbor areas for a particular range. Then here like that it will be covered. So telecom companies have to establish space station to receive the signals from the satellites. Then the signals will be transmitted to the range of areas, say 50 km, like that. So it's the importance of space station. So the one advantage with the 700 MHz is that telecom companies need to establish only less number of space stations for 700 MHz when compared to number of space stations required for 1800 or 2500 MHz bandwidth. So less number of space stations required means less input cost, so that cost of providing the 4G services will come down further if 700 MHz bandwidth is used for 4G services. So low capex that we already discussed, if you use 700 MHz, it will be 70% cheaper to provide 4G services by using the 700 MHz when compared to the 2100 MHz bandwidth. The reason is number of space stations required will be less for 700 MHz bandwidth. Next is the efficient network utilization. It is the another advantage with the 700 MHz. Efficient network utilization. So because of the efficient network utilization, call drop rates will come down further, or you can say it will improve, and quality of service will improve automatically. After seeing the word call drop, you may recall so many points, because the topic coming in the news for last 1 year. We already covered a separate lecture on call drop. What is that what is the decision of Troy that had taken on call drop, how it affected telecom companies, how telecom companies approached Supreme Court and Supreme Court judgment on call drop. So these are the areas which we already discussed. If 700 MHz is used for 4G services, telecom in India will become green telecom. That means telecom sector at present consumes 2.6 billion liters of diesel, that's worth of more than $1 billion per annum, and almost produces 7 million tons of carbon dioxide. If 700 MHz bandwidth is used for the 4G services, it will lead to the significant reduction in the diesel consumption. How diesel consumption will be reduced? Diesel is required to maintain the base station. It provides power supply to the base stations. 700 MHz bandwidth requires less number of space stations. So because of the less number of space stations, diesel requirement also comes down drastically, and so carbon dioxide emission also will come down. So that's why we can call telecom as a green telecom if 700 MHz bandwidth is used. Telecom operators and companies raise various issues. The device ecosystem is not ready for the band. Device ecosystem means here mobiles. So mobiles are not ready for accommodating the 700 MHz. So we need to design mobiles for 700 MHz. One issue raised by telecom operators, and second issue raised by telecom operators is that if they use their money for buying the 700 MHz bandwidth, it will lock their additional money and they can't expand the 3G services. At present, companies are investing massively to expand the 3G services. If the companies buys 700 MHz bandwidth, it will lock their investment or money in expanding the 3G services. So these are the issues raised by the telecom companies. So prepare thoroughly on the 700 MHz. It's one of the expected area for mains 2016 and also important for 2017 IAS examination. To get a PDF on these topics, visit our website commandindia.com. That's all about today's video lectures. We try to provide important current affairs topics on daily basis. You can do one thing, you can share this video lecture with your friends who are sincerely preparing for the IAS examination so that everyone will get benefit. You can also ask your friends to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that SVR IAS Academy grows faster, and in the meantime we will provide so many video lectures on daily basis for 2016 and 2017 IAS examination. If you are interested to join our online IAS 2017 batch video lectures, contact us via WhatsApp, and our WhatsApp number is 809-809-9922. All the best for your IAS exam preparation. Thank you.